In my opinion, it's okay to start either ways as long as you know how to get to the other end. If you do not have the capability to engineer and you're just making do for finding product market fit, you'll find product market fit, but then the speed at which you need to be able to build needs to be solid.
Welcome to Prime Venture Partners Podcast, a podcast for entrepreneurs looking to build and grow their startups. Learn about uncommon strategies and common traps from makers and doers of startup ecosystem.
Welcome to the Prime Venture Partners Podcast. We are delighted to have with us Mekin Maheshwari. He's been a very successful entrepreneur. He's had a long and a successful stint at Flipkart. Welcome, Mekin, to the podcast.
Thank you, Amit. Happy to be here.
Mekin, why don't you tell us a little bit about your career journey pre and post Flipkart?
Sure. So I started my career, I did my engineering from Bangalore, and post that joined Yahoo when Yahoo Bangalore was about 20 people. Grew with Yahoo Bangalore, was there for about 4 years, worked in data long before it was cool to work in data, built mobile apps on SMS. But overall found Yahoo to be too slow. Quit Yahoo in 2006 to join a startup as the first hire. The startup was called Eugenie. I was there for about 3 years. We were acquired by an American company after 2 years. And again, I felt that things were moving far too slowly. I quit Eugenie and then was hoping to do my own startup, looking for a business co-founder. Technology mujhe aati hai. I get tech, but if only I could find a business co-founder, I could do my own startup. In the interim, I had attempted a couple of conversations with a couple of people, and we'd approached some VCs who shooed us away. But maybe that's for another day. 2009, I was introduced to Sachin and Binny by Abhishek Goyal of Traxon, who had joined Yahoo alongside me back in 2002. And he was amongst the people who was pushing Axel to write the first check for Flipkart. And having done that, he was saying, "Yeah, मेरे को technology आती तो मैं कर लेता, but given that you know tech, you know how to build teams, this seems like a great opportunity. Why don't you go meet them?" Met them, and then we'll probably spend, as in like they say, rest is history. Post Flipkart, I took what most people would call a gap year for a year to just understand myself a little bit, understand specifically within education what role could I play, and then started Udyam Learning Foundation. And Udyam's been now running for 3 years, focused on building entrepreneurial mindsets amongst young people and enabling small businesses to succeed.
Sounds great, Mekin. I vividly remember us meeting around the 2008-9 timeframe as you had just gotten the offer from Flipkart at a Cafe Coffee Day on 100 Feet Road in Koramangala.
Yeah.
You correctly said the rest is history. And I remember some of the trade-offs you were thinking about in terms of making that decision. You also wrote a blog post about it. So can you talk a little bit about what made you join Flipkart?
So I basically was finding ways to convince myself and convince others why I should join Flipkart. I think at my gut, so the blog post was interestingly called Gut Feel Over Logical Reasoning. So to me, the decision was fairly clear. It was fairly obvious that I should be joining Flipkart, but to explain it to my dad, and it's interesting, there is a short story to it that when I was 16, my dad had placed 2 offer letters that he had for himself in front of the whole family, which included me, my sister, and my mother, and was asking for opinions. So since then, I've basically had this very strong belief that family has to be on board with career decisions I make. And I was finding it really hard to convince my dad why I should be taking whatever, a 50% pay cut to join an unheard of company where 75% of my advisors are telling me that e-commerce will not happen in India. So data nahi tha, lekin there was a strong gut feel that hey, the people and the way they were approaching the problem seemed right. And it was mostly because of those two, right? That it was the people and the way they were approaching the problem, and the little bit of customer research that I had done, both myself as a customer and a whole bunch of other people who were their customers at that point.
Sound great. How about the first few years as the CTO for Flipkart, right? You're just building out the company before we get to your head of HR role, which was itself a unique transition. So can you talk about the early days of tech and, some of the lessons learned for many of our entrepreneur friends who might be listening to this podcast?
Sure. So quick correction, I never took on the CTO title. I was VP engineering and then president engineering. But for most of the Janta, there is very little difference between the two. I was the technology leader at Flipkart. The early years, like when I joined, we were about 5 engineers, a couple of interns, and we had processes that didn't exist, or there were little processes. So for example, the website would go down for a couple of hours every night. And that's the database update time where you were able to update prices and so on. And how do you move from there to doing basics right, like, hey, no downtime? That, hey, we can figure out ways in which you can do simple things, simple database setups of master, slave, and then being able to read and being able to switch over, have load balancers. So bringing basic sanity in, moving to the right kind of data centers was the initial bit that, hey, as in we were a website, if we were a store that was meant to be 24/7 open, there should be no reason for us to go down ever, right? And I think that in some sense was the primary pieces. The next piece was, how do we architect ourselves? And I was very clear. And then over some time, I hired fairly strong leaders who were equally clear that we needed to be a service-oriented architecture, which allowed for different parts of the website, different part of the system to move at different paces. And this also resonated fairly deeply with our people philosophy, which I'll talk about at length, where we wanted people who were entrepreneurs themselves, who were leaders, who were owners. Right? So search is one person's baby, and they would look after search and they would write things. So that move to service-oriented architecture from a monolith, a database design, and laying those ground rules, in some sense, were some of the early parts of tech design and tech foundation laying. I think after this, we got to a point where we were clear that Flipkart's going to be massive, and it was going to be massive both in terms of demand and in terms of what we could build in terms of technology. And for that, we needed a very, very strong team. So I ended up spending a large part of my time in building a great team. And I count that as my largest professional achievement so far, which is the team that got built and the culture that got built in Flipkart Tech between 2009 to 2012.
Sounds great. So if I look about technology and very early stage startups, you end up having two ends of the spectrum in terms of folks who are running technology, whether they're VP engineering or co-founder or CTO or whatever the title may be, which is that either people will over-engineer, over-architect, over-design the system for, Six Sigma, 5.9 reliability and so on, or others who will do it completely on jugaad, saying, look, let's get product market fit first. And, if we live to see the day when things are scaling and growing, we can always architect, re-architect, rebuild, etc. What would you advise some of these sort of earlier stage entrepreneurs in terms of like what's a good middle ground or either side of the spectrum?
In my opinion, it's okay to start either ways as long as you know how to get to the other end. If you do not have the capability to engineer and you're just making do for finding product market fit, you'll find product market fit, but then the speed at which you need to be able to build needs to be solid. I think of building technology as a constant evolution alongside the product, not disparate from the product. So wherever in areas where you found product market fit, you better also find engineering fit. Right? We don't necessarily talk about engineering fit or technology fit. At reasonable levels of demand, your technology should start becoming scalable, just like your demand has become scalable. Till the time your demand is not scalable and is not scaling, it's okay for you to experiment. It's okay for you to make do with MVPs, both in terms of product as well as tech. But as soon as you have PMF, you better have technology fit, because then the demand doesn't wait, and we have enough skeletons lying in the internet space of organizations that hit product market fit but did not hit technology fit. MySpace is my favorite example of a company that hit product market fit so well that they collapsed, or thanks to lack of technology, they collapsed. So yeah, I wouldn't say that you have to start one way or the other.
Yeah, I would kind of agree with you, except that I think even prematurely over-architecting, over-engineering the product before you've got the customer, the demand side, the value prop really sorted can also be a little bit of a challenging
Dangerous.
thing for an early stage startup because you'll over-engineer this, but you have no idea whether this is going to work for the customer.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
obviously the
I
answer
think
will
the,
vary for each area.
I think the challenge there is often about in the process of over engineering the assumptions that you then don't let go. Because as you are designing and architecting and engineering, without having real customer data, without having real customer insights, these are only your assumptions that are getting hard coded into the system. And often those assumptions then last far longer, even in the face of real customer behavior. So that is dangerous if you over engineer too much. Otherwise, tech over engineering you can solve for. Just like tech under engineering you can solve for. It's the mindset that you have about, oh, this is the right way of doing it or this is the wrong way of doing it. That may be a larger challenge.
Sounds great. Let's jump to the interesting comment you made that you consider one of your largest, if not the largest professional accomplishment to be building great teams. Can you talk a little bit about, what some of the lessons learned were, what some of your best practices were in terms of building teams and things that you perhaps didn't get right as you went along this journey?
Yeah, I think first was just to be ambitious. That you can actually attract great talent and be proud of the mission that you are working for, and go after and pitch, go after the best talent that you can find. So something fairly simple hack that we did was like people who were doing well at Flipkart, we would ask them that who are the 5 best people that you worked with, and then we would go after them. So that's one piece. I think second is just having a fairly strong hiring process, which was thought through. And yeah, there are some stories that Amit you might be interested in because in early Flipkart days between 2009 and 2010, we ended up interviewing close to 25 people from Google and hired zero. And we got a very, very bad name for it. तुम लोग अपने आप को समझते हो क्या हो kinds, right? Like who are these people? What is this company that interviews Google engineers and doesn't hire them? And when I reflect back now, that for most of our interviews, we had the technical pieces where a lot of the Google engineers excelled at, but we also had non-technical bits where for building something like Flipkart, we were very clear that people should have iterated post product market fit. People needed to understand, engineers needed to understand the impact of their decision on customers and where and how that might have happened. And for whatever reasons, that the 20 odd people that we interviewed, we did not really feel that on those areas we were finding fitments. I feel that having an opinion on what you want to build, like ideally having a thought through opinion on what kind of an organization do you want to build and how, and then being able to implement it through processes, even if it stands against traditional wisdom that Google engineers are the best, I feel is an important piece or is an important lesson. So first important lesson is just think about what kind of an organization do you want to build and then design systems and processes, especially hiring and performance around those core design principles.
Got it. So let's sort of drill down into that a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Because you started so early, there wouldn't have been that many people that would necessarily have lived and seen the scale past product market fit. Now, of course, we see a lot of the, Flipkart and ex-Flipkart Mafia and some of the other, internet large companies, right, where people have come out and had learned that 3, 4, 5 years of Flipkart experience. But back then, you perhaps didn't have a lot of that, right? So how did you then kind of build that early, founding engineering group of, 10, 20, 50 people?
We are basically looking for foundational things at a very, very core, simple problem solving, design and architecture level. Were people able to understand limitations of their thought of the specific solutions that they were talking about? We weren't looking for people who knew a specific technology. So we never hired a Java engineer. And we're basically looking for people who could solve a problem and know up to what limitations their solutions work. So know the challenges with their solutions, and ideally in some cases be willing to learn other methodologies or other ways in which the solutions could be scaled. I think it was primarily this bit of being able to learn, because like you said, most people in India had not necessarily already developed large distributed systems. A lot of large distributed systems got built, barring a few internet companies that were there. So I had done some at Yahoo. We'd seen some other companies do a little bit, but there were very few of those. So scale was, a lot of Flipkart engineers saw scale for the first time in Flipkart. But that was okay as long as they were willing to learn. They had this attitude towards understanding the why of things. This is a good solution, but why is this a good solution, and up to what limits is this a good solution? So our interview conversations were, if I may leap, they were often Socratic in nature. Right? कि अच्छा ये जो बोल रहे हो आप क्यों बोल रहे हो? Just because something is a best practice. So the phrase best practice was actually not looked at kindly within Flipkart. You were expected to understand why is this a best practice, and specifically in technology, it was the expectation that you would understand that, oh, this is a best practice for these situations. It works here, and in some of these situations, it starts breaking. Because when you had people, so I'll give you an example of, if you had to design for failure, that's not a common practice in very, very reliable systems. And especially if you have to design for failure in process, the part that a publisher is saying that the book will be available tomorrow, but you know that that's not reliable. Now, how do you model that? If you don't figure out ways of modeling it, then you will end up creating customer experience that's not what we would be proud of. So challenges like these, you needed people to be thinking about both the business problems and the technology challenges alongside. And without them being able to do both of these, you would end up creating poor customer experience. So basically, we looked for first principles and good understanding of customers and business. The one huge positive for Flipkart was that its engineers were also its customers. So we could place ourselves in the customer's shoes fairly easily.
Sounds great. Very fascinating. Switching gears and now talking about your head of HR or kind of people leadership role. How did that transition happen? And more interestingly, what are some of the skills you could take with you from whatever you had done primarily as an engineering leader, into the head of HR role? And what are the things that the head of HR role taught you that you never knew before?
Sure. So post my head of technology role, for a year, I was running a couple of interesting startups within Flipkart. One in the digital media space, where we had a music app called Flight and eBooks. And the other one in the payment space, it's called Payzippy. Fortunately or unfortunately, both of them, like all three of these products, shut down. So I have enough in terms of failures in my resume. But while these were still on, about 10 months into it, Sachin had reached out saying, nahi ho raha HR, right? We've tried hiring a bunch of people from outside, and we were unable to find people who could make simple things work for us. When I took on the HR role, our largest pain was we were hiring about 5 people a week for our supply chain, where we needed to be hiring about 500 people a week. So how do you crank up an engine that's right now operating at 5 a week to 500 a week? How do you bring in basic problem solving mindset, break the problem down, figure out where the bottlenecks are? As in, you seek a little bit of traditional wisdom, because not a lot of HR companies had hired 500 people a week, or those who were doing it in very different spaces. So even here, being able to apply fresh thoughts to how you may solve the challenge, or what may work, what may not work, was an important piece. And given my own passion, and given I count my largest achievement as having built the Flipkart tech team, this was a no-brainer for me personally, that having an opportunity to do that at Flipkart scale was positive, even though the rest of the world, including my own teams, saw it as a demotion, which is funny, but that's how HR is seen.
So one lesson was basically applying first principles, fresh thinking, sort of technology problem solving to HR. Were there any others? And then the flip, right? What were the things that HR taught you that you had no idea about before?
Oh, absolutely, right. The one other lesson is that it's far easier to do HR when you are the leader. So doing HR for the technology team as the technology leader is far easier than doing HR for technology when you are not the technology leader. Because unfortunately, as HR, you do not have access to all the levers. So as a very simple example, there was a point in time where we switched our onboarding from a simple 2-day induction process to a 6-week onboarding process. Now, I had researched it, we had designed it really, really well, but for a business function that was looking for 50 people to join them in the month of August, suddenly those 50 people being unavailable for a month and a half is a huge hit, right? And to plan for that, to design around it is much harder. And hence, decision making reduces quite a bit or becomes slower. I think the other thing that's very different and very, in some sense, very challenging with HR is that with tech, you can test everything and you can roll back almost all your changes. So you can be highly iterative and experimental in nature, which suits my profile quite a bit. That's how I operate. With HR, unfortunately, you can't give salary hikes and say, "अच्छा हाँ, maybe test करके देख रहे हैं कि क्या होता है," or you promote someone and you roll back a promotion, aren't things that you can do. So, in some sense, the speed at which you can learn reduces quite a bit because your leeway of experimentation is a lot lower compared to doing the same things in technology. So one of the things that I missed most in my HR role was the speed. That in technology, I could operate with far higher speed. With HR, I couldn't operate with far higher speed for both reasons. That one, the implication of the decisions was that they impacted people and real lives. And second, you couldn't change those decisions easily. You can't undo a decision in HR easily.
Fascinating. Let's say it's unlikely, but let's say there are HR leaders listening to this podcast. Like, what would you advise them? Classic, traditional HR leaders who've done various elements of HR role, but supporting business leaders or technology leaders in their various companies, later stage startup. What are a few things you would tell them?
I would think if HR leaders think of themselves as business leaders solving problems using HR tools, they would probably be far more effective than just HR leaders using HR tools. I think the understanding of business problems, of core challenges, and being able to solve them versus implementing systems and processes. So why are we doing a performance management system? Should our performance management system be developmental in nature, be evaluative in nature? If when to give a bonus and when to give a salary hike, and in a new startup's case, how do you even think about ESOPs, right? So what's the mental model of capturing value that you are giving away as part of ESOPs? I think being able to design and think about these from a first principles point of view would be very, very helpful for a lot of HR leaders. If I had to say two words, it will be as in business first, solve business problems, and use HR as the tools to solve those problems.
Sounds great. Let's switch gears and talk about what you're doing now, but in particular, what is Udyam trying to accomplish, and what have you learned in the last 3 years as you've been running it in terms of the grassroots level talent in India, who is going to be the next generation of entrepreneurs and so forth?
So as I was exploring education, I realized that our education system does not learn. Right? Our education system has not learned much over the last 50, 70 years. It hasn't changed much, even though the world outside has gone from being a very violent manufacturing-led world to being now a services, knowledge-based world where careers are changing far more rapidly. But our education system continues to do what it was doing at least 100 years back. And one of the largest efforts of Udyam has been to enable the education system and as a result youth be more in touch with the real world, be more prepared for today. And I feel one of the simplest ways of being more prepared for today and tomorrow is to be more entrepreneurial. That phrase, even though for the startup ecosystem it's catchy, it's sexy, it captures a whole lot of what's happening to the world around us. Just like an entrepreneur's world, the world today is changing very rapidly. And like an entrepreneur needs to be prepared and needs to actually be able to drive the change or at least adapt to the change, so does everyone else. So what we at Udyam do is to basically enable people to be more entrepreneurial, especially young people. We do that through building curriculum, which we've had success in working with state governments so that government schools start implementing these curriculums. And that curriculum is primarily a curriculum of doing. So it's not a theoretical book-based learning about entrepreneurship or learning about the new world, but actually doing stuff. So for example, a key element of the curriculum is students actually doing a real entrepreneurial project with real money. So we at Udyam have experimented with about 3,000 students where we've given them money to try out, do something entrepreneurial in a 2 to 6 week period. And we've been fascinated by both the fact that they've been able to try something entrepreneurial and return the money, but the approaches they have taken and in many cases, the kind of decisions that they have made. These aren't typical innovative ideas, but for people, for girls who are unable to talk and introduce themselves, to go inside buses or like trouble people by selling things to them has been fascinating personal journeys for them. So we've been able to get state governments to do things like that. So we've been able to implement Udyam influence curriculum in a couple of states, and are in conversations with about 6 states right now to get the same done in those state government schools too.
Fascinating, Mekin. This has been really good talking to you. Lots of interesting, exciting insights from Udyam to Flipkart and beyond. We'll try and wrap up here. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Amit, for having me.
Dear listeners, thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast app for free, and you'll be the first one to know when new episodes are available. Just search for Prime Venture Partners Podcast in Apple Podcast, Spotify, Castbox, or however you get your podcasts. Then hit subscribe. And if you have enjoyed the show, we would be really grateful if you leave us a review on Apple Podcast. To read the full transcript, find the link in the show notes.